Good morning, wherever you are. Good morning, and welcome to Sky Money Live here on Sky 107.FM. Of course, we are here every weekday, Mondays to Fridays, to bring you the program Sky Money Live here on Sky 107.1 FM. My name is Michael Bayer. Of course, I'm always here with my Fire Labendi to bring you the fascinating breakfast show, Sky Money Live here on Sky 107.1 FM. Today is the 7th of July 2025. 2 minutes to talk about this morning. How was your weekend? And did you follow happiness over the weekend? Did you listen to the former minister of finance, Samuel Twe? Samuel Twe during the weekend made some shocking revelation, and of course during the course of that press conference, Samuel 12 also disclosed that welcome back to Radio Sky Money Live here on Sky 107.1 FM. The program comes away every weekday, Mondays to Fridays, 7:30 to 9 o'clock. And of course, I'm always here with my Fire Labendi. This young guy, this guy so passionate of Lofa County, and usually he don't want to dive into regional conversation, but if you go for his people, he usually go for you. But let's join my Fire Labendi this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Michael, and good morning to our valuable listeners. It's always good to be here, and of course, I'm from Lofa, so I mean, it's not just about just loving a place. It's about my belonging. That's where I belong. That's where I mean, if I do not know where I come from and I do not cherish where I come from, no matter how the place is, then it means that I am somebody who's experiencing identity crisis. But I love my country, I love my county, and I love my country.
Even though you don't normally dive into regional discussion, but
the person who usually tries to drag me into regional discussion is T-Max, but every time he tries that, he never survives, because he knows that he has nothing much to say about Grand Crew, as compared to the way Lofa is seen in the eyes of many Liberians. But it's good. Let us not spend more time on talking about our region. But it's good to be here. The young man's name you mentioned that we're going to be playing host to this morning is someone I admire so much. I have interacted with Duku from Capital FM, I think Radio Maria, I think even ABC Radio maybe, and Sky FM again. Duku is so passionate. He's not the young guy that is involved into the combative politics thing. He's more of a youth developer and an advocate. So, I mean, this morning, one of the reasons why I invited Duku is that, Mark, I don't know whether you watched the video of a group of young people trooping at the Ministry of Labor, for the vacation job. That video is so disturbing, and in fact, that video brings exactly my high school memories. You remember during the Celis administration when that vacation job was launched? I think, Mark, you worked. You did that job, right?
I participated in one of those forms, specifically the Morris City Corporation.
Right. Yes, we're under the Morris City Corporation. I was fortunate to have served as as a supervisor during that time, and I had I think about 80 or so persons that. The Minister of Finance is heard saying that he gave the National Elections Commission 4 million than it needed or than they needed. Back in economics, why you cueing the clip? Back in economics, in economics, not even back, but in high school, Mark here, you know that we did opportunity cost, we did scale of preference, we know what wants and needs are. Our wants, according to economics, our wants are incalculable. We want a lot of things. You know, we want to be happy, but there are too many things involving to being happy. All right. But if you need to meditate, it means that you can find a place. You need to find a place to sit down and meditate, because at that time, that is what you need. In that need, there are many wants, but before the need came, you pull out one need from your many wants. You want to be happy, but at this present moment, what I need is meditation. So you find somewhere to sit and meditate. So if someone needs meditation, and then you give them more than meditation, even though they didn't need the other things that you add to it, you are adding to what they need. It means that there's something wrong somewhere. There's a problem. In the context of the Minister of Finance, you know, to say that I gave the National Elections Commission 4 million more than they needed, well, this is, I mean, beyond, among many things he said, like in fact he signed 10 years electricity deal, you know, for Liberia. In fact, after this government, another government will come and will still benefit 4 years from that electricity, you know, agreement. And this is where the LEC, I think the management of the Liberia Electricity Corporation, should provide us information, or you know, they should tell us exactly whether what the Minister of Finance is saying is true or not. In the absence of that, it means that maybe silence means consent. Either they're saying yes or no. But let's just listen to the Minister of Finance himself before we delve into making some comments and hear from the public, and subsequently usher in Duku Jallah, our guest, from 8 to 9 o'clock.
What we want in the country is not witch hunt. It's to go at the evidence. When you present the evidence that shows somebody does wrong and they steal government money, they go to jail. When you manufacture it, like the way I'm explaining, you come in for Samuel to put in jail for COVID-19 money that he didn't spend, Samuel will win that case. You will get some appreciation for going to arrest Samuel. But sooner rather than later, the majority of the people will soon know that you went after Samuel for the wrong reason, and so your fight was bogus. So we need authentic fight against corruption. As a Minister of Finance, you coming after me, you got to be prepared. No, I say that for all ministers of finance. I say that for Gafon, I say that for Amara. Because ministers of finance are not spending ministers. They are appropriating ministers. That's why that's a difficulty. I gave the national elections 4 million more than they needed because of the national emergency. You can't put me in jail because I gave them 4 million, or you go ask them the 4 million that 12 gave that were not on budget, they you use it for election or they you eat it. And they told you say they use it for election, then you will kind of arrest 12, say 12 gave them 4 million not in the budget. They are the accounting entity. That's it. You know, I will not talk about the case that are before the justices, I told you. But there is a fishing expedition on the national security front. It's all fishing. I will tell you, if the government has a legitimate case of corruption or any of our officials who embezzle public money, that official should go and put the money back. President Weah will support that, and when he comes back to power, we'll take the fight against corruption to the next level. But it's not going to be on the basis of which one. It's not going to be on the basis of scoring political points that you arrest certain number of individuals so you have succeeded, whereas corruption is even more massive in the current administration. You fight finance minister, I know everything about the state. I'm a member of the National Security Council. I'm vested with important state secrets. I can tell you, President Bwaka, right now, I can tell you, if I open my mouth here, but I will not do so, I'm sworn to secrecy.
You know, in this less than, Mark, what's the duration of the clip?
I think it is less than
2 minutes.
2 minutes. So 1 minute 54 seconds.
So Mark, this is where production comes in. I attended the press conference, and I managed to present a clip to the public that will have in it so much information. First, he's saying you cannot go after a finance minister, because he is not a spending minister, he's an appropriating minister. What's the difference between a spending minister and an appropriating minister?
I think he meant to say,
That-
finance minister, do not go about physical cash. They use the paperwork and authorize people to use the
yeah,
physical cash.
they do authorization. All right. So if you go after them, it means that it's like when you haul rope will haul butch. That's the context I am understanding that particular part from. Another part is we need to make sure we have evidence against people before we prosecute them. But what happened to the weeks during the WIAS administration? Did the government have evidence against these people? Salif and things. Subsequently, they got free, right? Maybe we need to check back that case and know whether these people were found guilty or not. But why were they free? Were there some negotiations or so? Because the CDC administration came and arrested some people and jailed them for some reasons.
Maybe it was due to the interconnectivity of which those guys got free.
Probably. Another thing in this very clip is that he's saying that I gave the National Elections Commission 4 million more than they needed because of the situation at the time. But I just, a junior high or senior high economics would tell us that needs and wants are different things, are two different things. For you to derive at the point of needs, you must be able to filter all of your wants and find one or two needs that you want to address at a given time. So NEC needed certain amount of money to conduct elections, meaning to the budget I presented it to the legislature. This is what it needed. The legislature approved the budget. Finance minister said no, even though you approved this budget, but I'll give them 4 million more than they need.
Then, for example, you requested for 6 million and I gave you 10 million.
10 million, all right, then they need. So now he's saying, okay, you can't come after me. If you come after me, I am a member of the national. Another part of the clip, of that very clip, he's also saying it's like somebody trying to instill fear in people. Now let me tell you something. You don't know me, eh? They play saying I get information on you. Plenty information. It's just looking like some of the blackmailing journalists that we have, some of our friends. They will call newsmakers and tell them, okay, you know what I mean? I'll go to press. I will publish you tomorrow. You don't know me, eh? Tomorrow you hear me discussing you on the radio. I will write about you in my newspaper. So it's about somebody using their position to intimidate another person to surrender. A whole government.
And that statement could also be somebody using the current situation to find a way for common ground, to find for negotiation behind the scene.
Probably. All right. So say, I'm a member of the National Security Council of the country. I have information. In fact, even you, the president, if I open my mouth right now, President Baka, if I open my mouth, but I will not do it because I'm sworn to secrecy. I mean, what is that?
And people are chanting battle cry.
No, forget about the battle cry. That's the people modus operandi. That's what they do. Because in the first place, when you get to the CDC headquarters for press conference, you have to wait for about 30 minutes for a battle cry to be sung.
30 minutes?
Sometimes an hour. Sometimes an hour just for the battle cry alone. I mean, if you were using data to go live and you want to do just the battle cry alone, all of your data will finish before you even pay attention to the main press conference. But that's not the main thing that we're discussing. The point is, the Minister of Finance in this less than 2 minutes clip, he has provided so much information to the public. I don't know whether he properly calculated before going to the press, or because he actually went to address the press on Stanton Witherspoon. He said Mr. Witherspoon has been attacking him for 4 years, said he'd been finance minister, and Mr. Witherspoon accused him of eating $30 million, of destroying the country, and therefore he will file a lawsuit against Mr. Witherspoon, and so on. And he said so many things. Now, that was on paper. Speaking extemporaneously, he now went on to address issues in providing documents to everything. But Michael, let's take a break and ask the public, what do you make of these assertions? Why are you doing that? Kindly punch the clip again. When we'll come back, we'll open the lines to hear from the public.
What we want in the country is not witch hunt. It's to go at the evidence. When you present the evidence that shows somebody does wrong and they steal government money, they go to jail. When you manufacture it, like the way I'm explaining, you come in for Samuel to put in jail for COVID-19 money that he didn't spend, Samuel will win that case. You will get some appreciation for going to a the wrong reason. And so your fight was bogus. So we need authentic fight against corruption. As a minister of finance, you coming after me, you gotta be prepared. No, I said that for all ministers of finance. I said that for Gafon, I said that for Amara. Because ministers of finance are not spending ministers. They are appropriating ministers. That's why that's the difficulty. I gave the national elections 4 million more than they needed because of the national emergency. You can't put me. Security front. It's all fishing. I will tell you, if the government has a legitimate case of corruption or any of our official who embezzle public money, that official should go and put the money back. President Weah will support that, and when he comes back to power, we'll take the fight against corruption to the next level. But it's not going to be on the basis of which certain number of individuals, so you have succeeded, whereas corruption is even more massive in the current administration. You fight finance minister, I know everything about the state. I'm a member of the National Security Council. And that's that with important state secrets. I can tell you, President Bwaka, right now, I can tell you, if I open my mouth here, but I will not do so, I'm sworn to secrecy.
And that's it. That's the former Minister of Finance, Simon Detour. What do you think? Let's have a conversation. Call us in the numbers 0777 777 107 777 107 0777 221 223 are the numbers you can call us on to participate on the program this morning. This is Sky Morning Live on Sky 107.1. We welcome you to this fascinating edition of the program. This is where we come in the morning, have interaction with you, and we welcome you all of the time. You've always been a very great partner to us, all of you. So let's have a conversation now. Tell us what you make of the former Minister of Finance assertions, during his press conference last Friday. Let's hear from this first person. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning, sir. Let's hear you.
Good morning.
You're live. Go ahead. Make your point.
Yeah, I call from District 14.
Go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Stephen S. I call from District 14. Pertaining to the topic on the discussion, I want to say that, first of all, former finance minister has already exposed all the things, all those that are part of it. He might not say that in opening his mouth like that, because now he has already exposed himself. So that the only good thing for him, now let him call all those that are involved.
to go to court. And so once he goes to court, he's going to, prove his innocence. Let's hear from you. Call us on those numbers: 0-777-777-107, 0-777-777-107, 0-777-221-223 are the numbers you can call us on to participate on the program this morning. This is Sky Morning Live on Sky 107.1. The second segment of the program, we're going to be speaking with a youth advocate, Mr. Duku Jallah. Is going to be our guest this morning. Sure, if he's in the building, he's going to be usher in. But yes, welcome to the program. Let's have a conversation. Let's take a few more calls, Michael. If you're there also following us live on Facebook, you can also drop your comments. We're going to read them out for you. This is Sky Morning Live. You listen to the Minister of Finance. We brought you an excerpt from his the press conference he had is going to Friday, where he is challenged. In fact, he's willing to go to court. Of course, he's willing to go to court. Yes, he's willing to go to court, but in so doing, why he's saying that he's willing to go to court is at the same time providing information and saying to us that, that the whole thing about everything is a witch hunt. He's terming it as a witch hunt, but therefore, he is willing. He's going to make himself available. And as he makes himself available, and he also tried to let us know that as a member of the National Security Council of the country, he has so much information, but he's sworn to secrecy. Therefore, he's not going to explain anything at the moment. But when you haul rope will haul butch.
And one of the assurances that were given by the former finance minister is that when you take him to court, he will be out because he did nothing wrong.
He did nothing
and
wrong.
If giving the National Elections Commission additional $4 million is something that you want to prosecute him for, well, then you can go ahead. It is wrong.
if it is wrong, he said they spending money. Go ask them. You're spending money for election. You're not spending for election. But you already told us that
shouldn't be the one to be asking, answering our question.
You already told the public that you gave the institution $4 million more than they needed.
Why was the rationale beyond you giving NEC $4 additional million? Why? They requested for a certain amount of money and you said no. In how much you requested for this, I think I have to give you more than this.
Exactly.
Why was the rationale behind that? It should be something that the former minister should be answering.
And that is a very important point there. So you can join us now, have a conversation. But Michael, like Liberia, sometimes when people are too quiet, they say that maybe you are not intellectual or so. But I don't think intellectualism is all about talking. All right. Sometimes your silence can be more powerful. In fact, silence is goading than too much talking all over the place. Silence is very goading. Sometimes you keep quiet. You are out there, before the court. Your mother is before the court. If I were in the cycle of the finance minister and provide him advice, I would tell him that, Chief, at this point, I would like for you to lay low. Lay low. Say nothing. Say nothing. Keep quiet. Follow the process. Make sure you gather all of your evidence and ensure that you sit down and be ready and face that court.
And my fire, sometimes when some of those things are coming out, it's a clear indication that those guys, all of those mixtapes, those things that they did while serving, it's just something that is they did it wrong, and it's about time that they should be told to the Liberian public. Sometimes those people cannot be doing it of their own will. Right. They just have to say it because that's the truth, right? Perhaps this minister of finance, the former minister of finance, after his press conference, he sat and realized that the information that he gave out, it is something that was not to be let out of the bag. Don't you think that as now the former minister has received series of calls and might even be regretting making some of those comments?
I think so. Let me see. I can usher in our guest. I'm getting a call from Duku. Probably he's in the building.
Like I said, perhaps the revelation by the former minister, it was not his will. He decided to go and just talk about maybe his situation with Stanton Waterspoon, but due to the hidden truth that should be revealed to Liberians, this minister couldn't just hold back his words, but to provide the information as it unfolded yesterday, something that was kept from the public. But come to think of this, right? If the minister want to be fair to himself, based on the information, that information alone is sufficient to maybe tie him down to the act of corruption. Because one will want to know, if you gave additional 4 million to NEC, we want to know why was it necessary to give additional 4 million after even the NEC themselves provided their breakdown of their activities and told you that they need a specific amount. But you coming back to give the additional money, that alone calls for a whole lot of investigation. That alone explain itself as to the mixed appropriation of some of the funds. We have government offices that were stranded. We have other institutions that their budgetary allocation was minimum to take care of their activities. Yet the minister is now providing information that even though Ministry X never had sufficient funds to carry on their operation, but I gave additional 4 million to NEC. Matthias,
that's a million dollar issue for us to ponder over. But we're going to now usher in our guest, Mr. Duku Jallah. Duku is a youth advocate. He's more of a constructive one, finding a solution finder in his own style of advocacy than the usual, style of that we witness here some of the time, where we hear folks just finding more political issues to lift rather than offering solutions to the problems that Liberian youth are confronted with. Dugu and I share, a couple of things in common. In fact, when he shared a video regarding the young people that were trooped at the national, the labor ministry, the Ministry of Labor, for this vacation job. I tell you, this for me, it was just something that appeared really heartbreaking. And it's not new because, like I said, back during the service administration, I think that was maybe around 2008, 2009, thereabout, when that vacation job was introduced under the Monrovia City Corporation. I can remember how many thousands of youth troop all over the place. We're all over the place picking forms and ensuring that we go there and find something to do. And at some point, it ended up into violence. Some of our colleagues were beaten because I would never engage into violence. I would never allow anybody with me, even in my media job. When a policeman wants to attack me simply because I'm discharging my duty, I just excuse it, because I don't think there's any story worth dying for. Seeing that number again, then I started to think about, you want to tell me 20 years after or 19 years after, you are telling me that young people of this country still go through these kind of things? Unemployment rate. In fact, one thing that the former finance minister said is that one of the things he was working on, the government of the government, the we as administration was working on at the time, is that the issue of unemployment. So what they wanted to do, that if they had won the second term, they would have settled the issue of unemployment in the country permanently. But first, they set up the entire system. Everything that this government is operating on right now is something that the previous administration already set up. 10 years, electricity agreement, the issue of supporting the harmonization. If the current Ministry of Finance, if it just, tempers with the harmonization, the government will collapse. That's not why we're here at the moment. We have our guest in the studio. He's Duku Jallah. Duku, is under several umbrellas. At some point, I see, Duku, Lipedia. I see Duku is finding, the youth center, it's the intellectual hall at the ministerial complex. But somehow, I think they got transition to something else. But Duku is going to tell us more. But one thing that Duku is passionate about is the young people. And I think that this conversation, as we coin it, some of the challenges young people are confronted with, like unemployment, and how can we as a nation work to ameliorate some of these problems. Duku, good morning, and it's been a long time since we had this moment. Welcome.
Yeah, it's actually been a long time, Matthias, and thank you. You're someone who I followed for quite a while, and like you said, we share similar aspirations for society. We think young people should play a big role in societal transformation.
Right.
At this point, our role has been relegated to just participants in the democratic process,
Right.
and that's why we're campaigning for a stronger fly. We're campaigning for an effective fly, and a fly that would advance the youth agenda in a much more powerful way. But before I say anything, I'd like to express that the Fly family is currently bereaved. As you know, we lost our former president, Constant Tamba,
Right.
and much of the processes around elections are currently on hold. But I mean, this is a conversation that we've planned for quite a while, and I thought it was the responsible thing to do was to come out and honor the invitation.
Right.
So thank you so much for inviting me. I'm looking forward to a fruitful conversation.
Absolutely. Duku, I mean, how is the? I follow a couple of things. At some point, you were producing documentaries. You're doing interviews with some great historians. People that have created much impact. I followed one interview with, Tipotet. I follow a couple of other interviews with you. Was that on Lipedia? Tell me a bit about that.
I mean, a lot of things. One thing a lot of people don't know about me is my greatest passion is journalism.
Okay.
If I were not born in Liberia, if I were born some other place where there's much more freedom to pursue your ambition, I should say instinctive ambition, I would be a documentary filmmaker. That's my number one passion. I like telling stories. I think people are going through so much, and there's no one to tell those stories, and that's the reason why I've always. I mean, the work of Wikipedia is to tell the stories of people that are not normally heard. Social impact stories, and but also creating pathways for people to interact with public officials. So we're organizing the Future Leaders Town Hall.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm passionate about telling stories, but I'm also passionate about history.
Right.
I was having an argument with some of my colleagues in the chat room, and every time this issue about history, they always reference me because if you know me, you know that I do a lot of reading on history, and I've also gone beyond reading. I've met a lot of people who lived a history. I mean, literally a lot of them, the Tipute, Sawyer, all of those who read about the history of books, history of life, even those. Sometimes I'm even making my business to go to the Veteran Bureau on Oro and sit with these old studios to talk about, Samuel Doe. I mean, these are the kinds of things that fascinate me outside of advocacy. So yeah, so that's what Wikipedia has been about. Unfortunately, we're downgraded at the point. At this point,
Downgraded. Why?
Again, there are lots of things I'm doing,
Okay.
and I'm making cannot do everything at once. We're hoping that we'll resume operations with Wikipedia in 2026. But at this point, my focus over the past few months has been the Youth Legislative Caucus and my aspiration for the Federation of Liberian Youth.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the pursuits that attracting my energy at this point.
Let's share more light on small light on the Future Leaders Town Hall. What is that? Somebody said the last time I saw a post on social media, and I didn't believe it. I couldn't take it at a fixed value until the person was trying to accuse the Ministry of Information of stealing your idea when the ministry hosted some kind of discussion at the ministerial complex. It was an open discussion. Something folks say is similar to Duku Jallah's idea that he's proposing, or Future Leaders Town Hall. But what is the idea behind yours? Your own Future Leaders Town Hall. What is it about?
The Future Leader Town Hall is, usually I was Secretary General Fly, head of Secretariat. And so one of the first things we did was to develop an agenda called the Up to Us agenda.
Up to us?
Up to us agenda.
Okay.
So we got former presidents to fly in the room, and we just brainstormed on what we wanted to do over the next 3 years. And there are a list of things we wanted to do. And two of them that I was personally passionate about was the Future Leaders Town Hall and the Youth Legislative Caucus. The Future Leaders Town Hall, because I listen to radio every morning. There's a lot of discontent. People want pathways to vent to vent or to express alternative opinions on national issues. And I thought the Future Leaders Town Hall was a perfect platform to get policymakers to sit with young people to talk about what they're doing in their respective offices, but also to hear from young people on how they can make their delivery better. So that was what the Future Leaders Town Hall was about. We had a couple of them, I think 2 of them, with the Ministry of Education. So for example, the minister comes and said, young people talk about the impression of a job and what they would recommend. For example, Isaac Mwapo attended one of those town halls with the Minister of Education, and he recommended that people go to school in those high schools, and in the end, there's nothing. So now the ministry, from that program, from that town hall, the ministry now has an official partnership with his nonprofit Educated Future. And in every school year, they're going to partner to certificate students from across the country. So these are the kind of changes we wanted to.
It's about motivating young people so they can go beyond just doing.
So every year, students know that they will be honored by the government for those in their schools. So there's huge competition, So that's one, output from the Future Leaders Town Hall. But then I thought that since this was more like government, helping government connect with young people in a more constructive way, it will make much more sense if I reach out to the Ministry of Information and say, can we do this together? Unfortunately, the ministry didn't see it that way. Originally, the idea was embraced, but the ministry thought that they should run with that. And because
they should run with that?
Yeah.
I mean, what they run with it, from a different angle?
Incredibly political. Since the election, Matthias, I made a commitment to myself to stay apolitical. So sometimes when issues turn political, I just try to, keep a distance. But the reality is, we actually started.
So did the ministry brush you on the side and say, you know what, we're going to run this our way? You can't be the one.
What the ministry said specifically was that they have had this in the works for a long time.
They've had what? They've had the idea of also having it?
Yeah, similar to that. They have had it in a long time. Okay. And in fact, they told me that we can carry on what you wanted to do. I mean, I could have, but the problem is we've already had provisional conversation, and it felt like we were partnering to deliver on this. I mean, at a certain point, we had the commitment from the Minister of Finance to have a Future Leaders Town Hall at the ministerial complex. But because of all these complications, long story short, we're not conducting the Future Leaders Town Hall anymore. The ministry
so it's suspended now.
It's suspended. I'm hoping that as President of Fly, this is something I'm incredibly passionate about. As President of Fly, this is something we're going to lift, and not just in Monrovia.
Wait, did you? I mean, what I'm not getting straight is that
the problem is I'm not going to give you because if I try to provide specific details, I might may sound political, and I'm in a place that I don't want to sound political.
I understand, Duku. You came up with a brilliant idea. I'm sitting here. I know you always reach out to me whenever you come up with some of these positive ventures that Matthias, there's a way. Okay, I know you have a platform. At any time, I'll be reaching out to you so that you can maybe host 1 or 2 of my guys, or I will come personally and discuss this particular idea. I didn't hear that from you, but I kept on following all on social media. I said, but there's a brilliant one that Duku is coming up with again, Future Leaders Town Hall. I would like to go there and provide coverage, do commentary, interact with some of the young people that are during the maiden edition or even successive editions of the Future Leaders Town Hall. We need to see that the ministry, was doing similar thing at the ministerial complex. And I'm listening to you right now that, hey, I'm suspending the team, Matthias. I don't want to be too political and thing. I mean, is it that some men sat down somewhere and took the young man's idea and ran with it and say, you know what, you go take the backstage because we saw you associating with certain politicians?
No, it's not that. The first thing, Matthias, the ministry has the statutory responsibility to amplify government accomplishments, to communicate government accomplishments, and organizing events like that. Honestly, falls squarely on the ministry, and that's part of the reason why I thought that we should partner with them, because I always believe in partnerships. I thought it would have a way better value if we partner with the ministry, because it becomes a national program.
Right.
I mean, there's something I could do without the ministry. I could currently do the Future Leaders Town without the ministry. But what do we want? Do we just want to have a dialogue, or do we want to have a dialogue with young people that would generate some sort of change, some part of positive outcome? something, and that's where the ministry came in. Unfortunately, as I've said, the Future Leaders Town Hall now is when the ministry runs. It's called Government Town Hall. It's not Future Leaders Town Hall.
Right.
The Government Town Hall is government engaged people across the country,
Including young people.
including young people.
Which are future leaders as well.
Exactly. The Future Leaders Town Hall is limited to young people.
Absolutely.
You know, so what that means essentially is that the Future Leaders Town Hall can still operate. I mean, we can still see partnerships with government. We can still deliver on our own. And this is something I'm committed to. As president of Fly is going to lead the Future Leaders Town Hall. We're going to create forums for young people to sit down with public officials and have civilized conversations on what works, what's working, and what things should be. So there is a commitment I still hold. As well as the Youth Legislative Caucus. You know, people keep talking about it's actually something that we should have led with Fly. You know, but when I was out of Fly, I saw that Fly was not really pursuing this, and there's something I too was extremely passionate about. I think there's a huge proportion of young people in the country, a very limited proportion of young people at the legislature. There's 3 young people at the legislature. That's under 35 out of 103 lawmakers. That's 0.3%, and so I thought that there has to be a platform for those at the legislature to encourage engagement with the legislature. Again, I'm all for constructive engagements. From the University of Liberia, I've been an apostle for dialogue. I've always believed constructive engagement. So I mean, these are just basically what these 2 different.
I mean, I'm trying to understand very well, but it's okay. Let me just quickly, put an open-ended question to you. You've done so much work with young people in this country. You are currently a Fly, serve as Secretary General. You are vying for the position of President at the Federation of Liberian Youth Fly. If you were to be waking up one morning, maybe by 2-3 o'clock, say Duku, given your interaction with young people, what is the major problem that young people are confronted with now since the war?
Unemployment.
Unemployment?
I think so. If you look at the 2022 census, and something that people barely reference, the 2022 census expressly see the employment rate in Liberia is 33.1%. That's the employment rate. In Monrovia, it should be even lower. That's what the census says. That's not what I'm saying. So that tells you it's over 60% unemployment in Liberia, and it's even pronounced among young people. And if you try to be a little more practical, but this Monday morning, go to West Point, for example, and see the amount of young people who has absolutely nothing to do. Leave West Point, go Sunny Way, or go Painesville, some of the urban settlements. The true young people with qualifications and competence with nothing to do. It's a huge crisis. The reason why this is important is because young people is the nerve of every society. 74.6% of people living in Liberia are under 35. Young people are not the majority, we're the absolute majority. So if you have this demographic confronted with a situation where they're rendered worthless, essentially useless to society, what happens is they start to find ways to express those grievances, either by being constructive or deconstructive. And I had a conversation with a young man yesterday, and he was telling me, he's actually called Elijah. Elijah and I was in high school, junior high school actually, together in Painesville. And Elijah was always on top of the class. Back then, I don't know what he's still doing in high schools, but the head of the class, when you get 90 average, you get promoted to the next class. So people during the first semester have to struggle to get on top of the class.
Right.
That boy will always come on top, no matter how you study. Elijah will always come on top of the class. It was Elijah's a girl, and I was in junior. I always came third, and there was sometimes vacillation between I and Doris, but Elijah kept the spot. He was on top every time. I met Elijah yesterday, and he's old. He's looking way more older than his age. He's bobbing hair, and I was shocked. I said, Elijah, what happened? You were so smart in high school. Like, oh my man, I graduated from high school and I got pregnant. I won't get how to take care of the family, no job. I had to be in the street. I've been cutting here for 12 years, and that struck me. And what I meant is we're a society that we do not honor our talent. Like, and there's a huge proportion of people with abilities to deliver. We have a society that does not recognize that. And this just feeds into why I think the Youth Unemployment Agency is important. It also feeds into why I think FLY is important. So to answer your question, I think youth unemployment is the most basic issue facing young people in Liberia.
So having our mark unemployment as the major problem faced by youth, my next question has to do with given that governments has played some role when it comes to employment and things. Do you think that the Liberian government have failed the youth when it comes to the issue of employment?
I think not just the government. I think successive governments have failed the youth. There's never been a history of Liberia where we have a national youth agenda. They had the arrest agenda, and I made a point. The president was in the meeting. The minister of finance was in the meeting, and the arrest agenda was read out and all the point. And I said, Mr. Minister, the majority of the people living in Liberia, over 70% are young people. This agenda says nothing very clearly about what it wants to do to improve the conditions of young people in the country. Young people are considered as part of the whole. My argument has been there has to be a separate youth agenda. And as president of FLY, this is one of the first things we will do to develop a national youth agenda. It's not something where we will sit and develop. I made a point in Duku town over the weekend. For the first time in the history of Liberia, we'll get young people collating themselves in districts, in counties, and we'll get opinions from everywhere and develop an agenda and present it to the government. So this is what young people want. And the agenda clearly says what we want young government to do for us when it comes to education. What government wants to do, what we want government to do for us when it comes to creating employment. But as president, we'll go way beyond that. I think FLY has been significantly underutilized in terms of creating opportunity. What FLY is, it is a non-political, non-partisan group that should advance the government youth agenda, help the government in its delivery to young people. It's not a political organization. And as president, one of the couple of things we want to do is to make FLY completely industrial. I had a long conversation with James Morba yesterday. He's the head of RIA, and he's someone who's been on the front lines of entrepreneurship. And we're just having basic conversation around what we want, because our idea around FLY is we wanted to move to become an industrial bond, a group that advocates for youth, but it also involved with industrialization. So some of the things we want to do is engaging government to expand the national cadet program. I was at BWI and I was just studying the BWI model. How can people go to college in Liberia, graduate, get a degree, and there's absolutely no experience?
Talking about that, there have been two major words that people actually look at when it comes to unemployment of youth. Talking about corruption and nepotism. These are two words that people usually look out for. What role do you think corruption and nepotism play in limiting youth when it comes to employment?
The thing about corruption and nepotism is, they are vices. They're vices that should be tackled, but it's not unique to Liberia. Donald Trump, a president, last time he appointed all his children to be this and counsel for this. It's not unique, and it's something that people. The personal interest is an ageless element of human behavior. People in positions of authority would almost always prioritize personal interests. So we can have debates about nepotism from now to the end of the world. It's going to exist. Unfortunately, corruption, it's also a problem. It's a problem that has to be addressed, and I think these two have had a big impact on opportunities, because if you don't, like brother who know your society, if you don't know somebody in a position of authority, even if you have the competence, they will not give you the job. It's a country where people put employment opportunity up when they've already decided who should take the role. So I think these are issues that institutions like fly. There has to be a greater awareness on how people are recruited, public and private agencies. But I also think the unemployment crisis can be fixed in a structural way. My prescription, number one prescription, is the formation of a youth employment agency.
What would I be doing?
I've argued with everybody, and I feel like I've never met anybody who thought that this is a great idea. People thought that government is overly, in fact, you can't continue forming new public institutions, it's going to bloat the budget even further. But I disagree. There's something called affirmative action. So, for example, women are a minority at the legislature. So the government can get partners in the develop how you call it, a law that say 30% should be of members of political people of names being submitted by political parties should be women. That's a terminal action to fix a permanent problem. So we say women unemployment and women political participation is a problem. This is a terminal action.
Right.
Youth unemployment is the biggest social issue in Liberia. Name one issue in Liberia, one social issue bigger than youth unemployment.
Drugs.
It's how do people? I had a long conversation with young people in West Point yesterday. How do people cling on to drugs? And somebody gave me a practical example. You wake up in the morning in the community, you not get food to eat. Your family in the house, they complaining on you. What you have to do is to just leave the course, go somewhere. Now you have to deal with depression. You have to be among young people to keep yourself. I mean, these are flimsy excuses, but in practical ways, this is how people in slum communities, for example, cling on to drugs. You know, so if you wake up in the morning, you know you have work to do. You obviously you become a drug addict by taking drugs over and over, and I mean sometimes using it as a sedation for depression.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so if you have an employment, if you have something to do at a school work, you wouldn't become. I mean, it's debatable, but you wouldn't be. So drug is a big issue, but I would debate from now to the end of the world that youth unemployment is a way bigger issue than drug. And because this is a big issue affecting young people, there has to be affirmative action. Affirmative action would mean creating a specialized institution to tackle this problem. And the success story is evident. Ghana has a success story. This is an amazing young man in Ghana called Malik Basantar. I met him just last month. Basantar runs the Youth Employment Agency. It's an agency not like the Ministry of Youth and Sports that we have here. It's run only by young people. Only by young people. Young former student leaders, former youth leaders. Only by young people. What they do is they find young people with qualifications and source employment in public and private institutions. But they're even doing way more than that. They're going into, for example, government relations with concessions. It's okay. Companies have a social responsibility. They're supposed to do X amount in terms of corporate social responsibility. Can you translate this into opportunity, whether it's scholarship or job creation?
Mm-hmm.
You know, they even going beyond that. He was in Dubai. He met a minister of transportation. He said, you're looking for drivers here? Let's sign a memorandum. We'll get 200 drivers from Ghana to come drive cars in Dubai. Young people. You know, so these are the kinds of things you do, and it can be way better. I mean, we can always localize the solution, but I do believe that youth unemployment is a big issue.
But
like the drug crisis, but there has to be a specialized institution to tackle this problem.
Duku, the part of it that people are arguing with you, they're debating with you, you know, a lot is that, and unfortunately, you know, disappointingly, you've not come across anyone that shares the same vision that you talk about youth employment agency. We have the youth and sports ministry, all right. You have gender ministry. Obviously, all of these ministries, they have responsibility to lift young people from certain level to another level. I mean, unlike Ghana, maybe, but how would the youth, you know, employment agency be, you know, much more powerful than the youth and sports ministry, say, than the gender ministry or so? Even if it is legislated.
No.
You mentioned here a few minutes ago that in Liberia, people will already decide whom to give the job to before even putting the vacancy notice up. That is just to make the public know
the first thing we have to accept, Matai, is that there is a solution to the youth unemployment crisis. I mean,
and the solution is establishing that agency.
No, that's not the only solution. That's part of the solution.
Okay.
So there's two choices we have. It's either we complain that unemployment is a crisis, you not get a job, or we find a solution. So I'm part of those who think that okay, we can complain, but we must also explore ideas that resembles a solution. And the Youth Employment Agency resembles a solution. So it's not about the Ministry of Youth and Sport divesting its responsibility. The Ministry of Youth and Sports is the statutory, overwhelming body that is responsible for regular youth issues in the country. The Youth Employment Agency have a singular mandate to find jobs for young people and end the unemployment crisis.
Whether in government, in private,
or in private sector.
Again,
I'm not a complete expert. The core of this, that's what I'm saying. What we're doing is we form a team of young lawmakers from Liberia and members of the Youth Employment Agency in Ghana, and we're calling and some other prominent youth leaders, and we have one Google chat, and we're constructing the bill together. So it's not like I'm going to impose my idea in terms of what I want the youth employment agencies to look like. We're harnessing experiences from everywhere to construct something that would work. Because I mean, I do believe it's an affirmative action for fixing the youth unemployment. For example, let me tell you something about it. I mean, the youth ministry is the statutory ministry for youth. I want to be Federation of Liberia president, so I have to have a very decent relationship with the ministry. But one of my disappointments has been, for the first time in the history of Liberia, this government added $1 million in national budget for the National Cadet Program. The National Cadet Program is a program that will provide terminal employment for young people just leaving college. So if you graduate from the University of Liberia, studying geology, for example, the government said, go work with Ashila Meta. We will pay you off the National Cadet Program. An excellent model for fixing the youth, the problems with school to work transition in Liberia. That money was at the ministry for the entire year. It was not utilized. Somebody told me that the money was again diverted to the army. I mean, how come we can have a national cadet program? That's because the Ministry of Youth and Sport is overwhelmed with the work. They have to do sports, they have to do TV, they have to do youth development policy, they have to attend all these different meetings. So now that is why I'm making an argument that, okay, so the work around employment for young people has to be led by a specialized agency. I mean, the debate over time with experience will improve, will mature, but at this point, I do believe that a youth employment agency, specialized body run by young people themselves, is part of the solution to solve the youth
is that one of your major objectives?
It's number one. It's number one on my list of what I want to do as President Fly. Right. I think youth unemployment is a problem in Liberia. I think it's a big problem. The reason why it's a problem is because, Matai, why did we go to war? We went to war in Liberia because there was a huge bunch of people who felt that nobody was listening to them. Right. There was no chance for expression of, to express their opinion or differences with government. It's happened. There's a huge proportion of young people with nothing to do. When my family called this bunch, the how you call them, the combustible materials for social explosion. It's just simmering, it's just boiling. The only one person who come and say, this person is the cause of your problem. You get people in the street because they do not have an option. So government have a moral responsibility. Fly has a moral responsibility to help government to find a solution. As president, youth unemployment is not the only solution. We're gonna have a lot of conversations. That's why I'm saying, in the first 3 months as president of Fly, we're going to have a national youth agenda, something that we've never had in Liberia. We've had agendas, but it's been young people sit in the room and decide what the future of youth engagement should look like. I think it should be the other way around. Our national youth agenda, over the first 3 months, we're going to engage from district level. We have, for example, District 16 youth agenda. Y'all sit in the hall and decide what development for districts should look like. That will feed into the county youth agenda, and then we have a national youth agenda. It'll make bullet points, 16 bullet points, or maybe 15 or 20 or whatsoever. It's submitted to the government. This will give us a framework, an advocacy framework. So we don't talk about everything. We know what we want, we're going to achieve over the next 3 years. And these are being drawn from opinions from young people everywhere. So, for example, young people say, we want a national program. We want government to pursue concessions in Liberia, to come together and have a national program where we get at least 100 young people out of the country study architecture. Because we have problems with our Liberian architecture is archaic. It's different. You go to Ghana, the way they do architecture, then the way they do it in Liberia. It's miles apart. So that's but this has to come from the young people themselves, the national youth agenda. So in terms of solution, I mean that's so the youth. I think youth unemployment is number one. If I've shared my platform, the second is just drug crisis. I think the drug crisis is absolutely outrageous. But again, there's a solution. When I was at Fly, we proposed a solution. The solution was something called the National Youth Farms. I'll be in Bond County this weekend, and we launched a youth farm in Totota. The National Youth Farm was a strategy where we get communities provide lands to young people, and we lobby with the Chinese embassy to bring machines in. Young people run these farms themselves, produce products from the farm and sell them off to make money for themselves, but also to keep them busy. So our solution for the drug crisis is to raise hyper awareness. People talk about the drug crisis, but we don't have a national awareness on drug in Liberia, whether it's in the schools, whether it's in the churches, whether it's in the mosques. So part of what we want to do is to do national awareness with drugs, but also I think pursuing a national youth farm is also a solution where we can get these young people from the streets and get them to be busy working on farms across the country, where they'll earn for themselves, but also keep them busy in a way that they don't have to abuse drugs. So, this, again, much of what we've been proposing has been, suggestions from our own experiences. But again, they're not imposition. We're going to run Fly in a way that the suggestions, our delivery is going to be determined by the National Youth Agenda.
So you serve as Secretary General of Fly, and you are now talking about youth employment and things. Given the current state of Fly, how can you describe Fly currently?
I think the folks at Fly have been doing an amazing job. I think they could have done a lot more better. But I think it's done well in terms of stability. You don't hear Fly in the news for negative reasons. And during the 2023 election, Fly played a prominent role. For example, the how they call it, the Fly was collecting data on youth. They had a youth situation room where they were collecting data on youth participation, and that data has been used by all stakeholders in Liberia, including the Liberian government. Fly did the Butu declaration, where they got young people from different political parties to go to Butu, where the rebels crossed in 1989, and signed an agreement on those grounds that we're not going to allow ourselves to be used to create violence and chaos during these elections. And that was a very powerful sign, a very powerful action. To get young people to be non-violent during those elections. And beyond that, Fly has rebuilt its credibility. One of the things Fly have not had in a long time is credibility, especially with donors. Government funding for Fly is diminutive. You need donor support to do much of what you want to do. And this leadership has done a good job in terms of advancing this relationship. But I think they could have done more, and that's the reason why I'm running for president.
What different will you bring to the table?
The voice. I think Fly should be the voice for young people. Whether young people everywhere. Fly should be those who will call on government, because that's what Fly was established for. Not to be political, but to be able to speak up on issues affecting young people, again, in a powerful way. Also, I think Fly should be industrial. I think Fly should, take actions around creating opportunities for young people. For example, Fly should be a part of the solutions. Corruption in our schools is a big problem today. Part of what we want to do as president of Fly is to create a student reporting network similar to the NSA, but it's within schools, where we get smart students and teachers who are committed to excellence in schools, reporting teachers and administrators who are promoting corruption. And Fly now takes on those reports and get the Ministry of Education to take an action. In that way, we take away corruption from schools.
Are you sensing Fly being more political now in your discretion than being industrial?
I wouldn't say that political means taking a partisan position. Nobody says Fly. Fly should express an opinion on politics, but the Fly we want to run is going to be far removed from politics, because I think it's never worked. Our focus would be much more on finding opportunities and advancing careers, but also helping the government deliver on this agenda. That doesn't mean we're not going to hold the government to account. We should hold the government to account. That is our mandate. But Fly should not be a political institution, and part of our work would be to ensure that. Let me tell you, Fly has a mandate. For example, Coca-Cola, Orange, Lone Star, when they sign agreements with government, part of the agreements they have corporate social responsibility. It is voluntary for the most part, but it's also enforceable. The president of Fly has a responsibility to engage concessions or companies in Liberia to ensure that they deliver on the corporate social responsibilities. How come after almost 180 years, we don't have a national youth center? What a president of Fly needs is a fine public land and engage concessions in Liberia to construct a national youth center. I was in Rwanda. In Liberia, in Rwanda, they have the national youth. It's called the Rwanda Youth Commission. No, it's called the Rwanda Youth Council. Their version of Fly. Something they did. They built a very big youth center where there's offices for young people. There's internet, similar to where. So when people want to play football, they got 2 packs. But when people wants to brainstorm, have intelligent conversation about the future, we don't have one. My brother Limpolo from Canada did the model for the Liberian Learning Center, something like that. But it has to be a much more massive, and it's something Fly should lead.
You say as Secretary General for Fly, what have been your contribution, and why are you speaking out now? Is it because you want to be president of Fly, for which you are coming out with those recommendations? When you won't serve as Secretary, you did not proffer those suggestions. Why not?
No, I would disagree. As Secretary General, we developed something called the Up to Us agenda. Every single thing I'm saying here, I'm not. Every single thing and more is a part of the Up to Us agenda. The Up to Us agenda was what Fly should have done in the 3 years of our administration. It was launched by the Minister of Finance at Corona Hotel. It's a public document I can share with you. Everything I said, the Youth Legislative Caucus, the leveraging relationship with private corporations to ensure that their corporate social responsibility are committed to Fly in a way that affects young people in a positive way is there. The National Youth Center is there. The National Youth Farms is there. All of those were there. And as Secretary General, not the president, what you are is like in other society where we have the prime minister and the president makes the final decision. They decide the course the institution should pursue. So the most you do is technical, and so I'm saying that what I'm saying is not new. It's something that we it's actually written in an agenda that we developed way back when we was elected back in I don't know when was that 2023. So but beyond that, as president, as I said, as secretary of Fly, I was not quiet. Before we came to Fly was not receiving any direct support from any donor institution. That's the first thing, because there was crisis before then, and we had already pushed our relationship with a lot of the partners. They thought Fly was not a serious institution, so if somebody won't give Fly money for anything, they will pass it through some institution, and they has to subcontract Fly. So there was never a direct relationship. I was Secretary General for 7 months. Within the first 3 months, we managed to get direct support through the European Partnership for Democracy. And what we did was to reach out to this institution and let them know we have something, we have a path, we have a strategy, and we knew we're different. So the first things we did was to rebuild trust with partners. I mean, trust that the administration of Benika has managed to sustain. But I left Fly with I think 3 or 4 projects. That was the one from the EU, the one from UCID. There was something, the youth situation room from the AU that was supported by the AU, and much more. So again, my role was to ensure that the secretary was functional, that Fly was receiving support. My role was not to take the ultimate direction of Fly, but I mean, my answer to your question would be all of the things I'm saying is written.
So before my fires come in quickly, let me give you my last question. Were you disappointed that all of those suggestions were now actually implemented to the letter? Were you disappointed?
Yes, disappointed to an extent, I would admit, but I was a member of a team, and our team, I was not the only person in Fly. Fly is made up of a lot of people from across the country. Our team was deciding which ones were the priority, and my responsibility as head of secretary was to deliver in terms of the consistent with the priorities that have been outlined by the team. And so this is what we did. I thought the progress was too slow, especially actually on the Up to Us agenda that we developed. I thought it was too slow, but again, I was a part of a team, and we're working as a team. So that would be my response.
Well, Duku, quickly, you are talking about the youth employment, policy or youth agency, right?
Yeah.
You earlier stated that we have like 0.3% youth representation at the national legislature.
Yeah, just 3 out of 103.
Right. So I mean that isn't, it's a very minimum number for us
Yeah.
to look at.
Before your question, that's a
Right.
minimum number. In my agenda, there's a solution. Part of our proposal as president of FLY is we're going to advocate for a 30% quota. I think part of the problem,
Just like the way the women
exactly,
participation.
women is 51% of the population. So if they can make an argument to have 30% quota, why can't youth make an argument? Part of the reason why young people are complaining is because we play the most dominant role every elections. After elections, our rules relegated to just participants. We're not. It's just nobody in the cabinet under 35, for example. So we have to start making these cases. How do we have a youth representation in cabinet meetings because you can't make decisions for us when we're not present. You don't know our concerns. I mean, nobody. You go tell somebody, say, "My man, I'm free, busy." I mean, these big people would not understand if you try to make an argument for why internet data cost should be lower. So there has to be a youth element in all these national conversations. And part of our proposal is to ensure that 30% of nominations from political parties will be young people. In that way, we can increase the proportion of young people at the legislature. Sierra Leone has done so. 20% of members of Sierra Leone Parliament are under 35. I was just there, I think, last month. And we're even helping them develop their own caucus because they don't have a caucus. But yeah, I was just trying to respond to that.
The question didn't come, you already responded. But the thing is, just to go ahead and just stretch a little bit, is that how are you going to ensure that the legislature buys into this idea, given that all of the budgets, I mean the agendas that each government comes with, you barely see a huge portion of that particular document where it says that this part of the agreement of this particular agenda. Say, take for example the poverty reduction strategy of former President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the pro-poor agenda, the arrest agenda. You just mentioned that you had to ask the Minister of Finance that. I don't see much of a representation for young people here. It means that, is it that the people sitting at the top, they see, is it that they fear the potential of young people, given that the percentage of young people is higher than the elders? If they are in power more, the elders are going to leave the stage and young people are going to be on the stage and think, how are you going to be able to convince people to buy into this idea you're talking about, youth agency?
I think, fear could be a reason why there's resistance. But I also think, you see, the Federation of Liberian Youth is a public institution. In fact, it's the only public institution in Liberia ran by young people. So if people say young people are not serious, it's because the public institution have been given to young people to conduct. I mean, we can't conduct ourselves properly. So the first thing we have to do is to make FLY a serious institution. We have to make FLY a serious institution.
It is not a serious institution.
I think it is, but it has to be much more than what it currently is in terms of being an active participant in the democratic process. You need a FLY president who can go, when there's issue with young people, go on the House floor and make the case. I work at the legislature, and I really do believe that the legislature is not as closed, or those are in power are not as resistant to change as we make it seem. I think the problem has been engagement, and that's what we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
As president, we're going to engage. We're going to do 2 things: engage and raise awareness. So, for example, the last budget, 200,000 was committed to youth development. You have over 3.8 million people in Liberia and commit to 200,000 to youth development. That's outrageous. But our advocacy would be, we have to functionalize the national cadet program. We have to increase the funding for youth development. Once I fly, the last budget, we're advocating for 10 million to be added to the budget to be invested directly into youth innovation and talent. I was on all the radio stations. I think I appeared on your show and was making the argument. It was that is crazy. What you want to do with 10 million? Why shouldn't government raise over 800 million every year? Why can't you set 10 million aside? Say the money will go into talented young people who has great business ideas. Is going straight directly to them. Young people who has some innovative potential is going direct. How is that controversial? In the end, in the next 10 years, the people who's going to run the country, they're young people. Mm-hmm. So if you don't invest in them now, you now have a generation of people who have neither the competence or the experience to deliver on anything. Then Liberia continues in the spiral on a development.
That's right. Let's hold on his Duku Jallah. Duku is vying for the presidency of the Federation of Liberian Youth FLY. Duku has been the youth advocate, basically focusing more on solution-based advocacy than just alarming on issues confronting young people. With few minutes to go, if you don't mind, you can join us now. Call us on the numbers 0777777 0777777 07777221223. The numbers you can call us on, or better still call us on 0887 to be live on the program. Maybe you want to make your point, your input on the program. Let's hear you. Call us on those numbers. Let's have a conversation. 07777 Now we're talking young people. Every time we wake up in the morning, we say drug killing young people. They're not picking fun at somewhere. Now most of the time we'll have these conversations and we say let's talk about the young people. Let's highlight the issues. Let's highlight the challenges. Then some of you just go quiet because it's not a combative political discussion, and then it becomes a problem for people to participate. But let's hear you. Join us if you don't mind. Call us on those numbers 07777 221 the numbers you can call us on to participate on the program this morning. Duku, when is the election? I've not followed the calendar, fully.
Also, the elections should be the way fly elections Congress are. The tenure of the current administration ends in August, 9 August in October.
Okay.
But now there's a lot of conversation around having elections. But the elections are held. One of the challenges we had back then was we had election. In the first 3 months we had to play inauguration. So you had 3 months of nothingness because you have to run, fly, and play inauguration. So there's conversation around how can we bring that day further, have an election earlier, and then we can have the inauguration, the transition in October. But the tenure ends in October. By October we have a new fly president. But the county elections have been ongoing across the country. I have had issues with the way elections were conducted. The
how do you do it? How does FLA conduct her elections? I mean,
it's an incredibly closed process. It's a process that, as president of FLA, we want to restructure. So organizations registered on a FLA have to send delegates to vote in the process. So you have to be a registered due-paying member on the FLA to vote in the process. And so that's how it's been across the county. So these counties, we elect the coordinator. The coordinator will designate the organizations that will come to the General Assembly to vote. So that's how it is. So it's with member organizations that are registered on the FLA.
So how do you campaign then to ensure that you woo people towards you?
You campaign. You see, I'm in a very really comfortable spot. I would say comfortable because I've been head of secretary. you need to engage in a constructive way and be very consistent with the way you engage in. And this is something we're committed to. The presidential job should be a full-time job. The presidential fly should be a full-time job. Everybody who works in fly should commit full-time. That's the only way the institution can be as effective as it should be. This is the reason why I'll be committed to give my time, giving myself full time to fly, and I'll be interested in building a team of young people who's willing to commit essentially to giving fly the outlook it deserves, the respect it deserves, so that it can be trusted and considered in all conversations concerning young people.
Thank you so much, Duku, for coming as always. It's always a pleasure having a conversation with you. Thanks for stopping by this morning.
And wish you best. Wish you all the best during the course of the conversation the rest of the day.
Right. Thank you. And that's Duku Jallah. Duku is vying for the presidency of the Federation of Liberian Youth Fly. And Duku is a youth advocate, much more focused on youth development. It was a pleasure having a conversation with Duku. We're always here. I don't know about Marker, but this is how we go home today on the program Sky Morning Live on Sky 107.1. Join us again tomorrow for another fascinating edition of the program. My name is Matthias Labindi, and I've been here with my colleague Markia Bayo.
Remember that 3 people have died, and we've had a person that nearly died and was seriously injured as a result, and that has led to these charges. I ask that we acknowledge those people and not forget them.
Kenyan police have blocked several roads leading to Nairobi to prevent